Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. This week we have another episode of the Commander's Guild Deck Techs, and our title for this week is What If We Blew Our Entire Budget on the Commander? Which might give you a little bit of a clue as to what we're doing this week. But if you haven't seen this before, what we're doing is we are randomly selecting a card from scryfall.com. We're working with a budget of less than $100 and building a commander deck for Magic around a theme or some aspect of our chosen card. Now, this week, we hit a couple of firsts. We got our first reserve list card, which makes life a little bit difficult. And we also got our first actual commander for this series. So, our card of the week is Ramses Overdark, 2 black, blue for a 4/3 legendary creature that can tap to destroy a creature that is enchanted. And when I first pulled this card, I thought there was no way we were going to be able to make this work. This is a $73 card, so if we're working on a budget of less than $100, this wasn't going to happen. But I figured I would at least give it a shot, and I actually did some of the math on it, and I realized that if every card in the deck, other than Ramses, was 25 cents or less, this would still be under budget. So that is exactly what we did. Every single card in the deck, except for Ramses himself, is less than 25 cents. And I'm sure it also goes without saying, since we got an actual commander as our random card of the week, we of course had to make him the commander of the deck. So as always, we have a couple of themes here in the deck. The first one, since Ramses cares very heavily about enchantments and auras, we obviously have a bit of an enchantment sub-theme, which is not something usually done in the Dimir colors. So I got to play around with some of the blue and black constellation cards and auras and cards that care about enchantments like Protean Thaumaturge, which can turn into a copy of another creature whenever we have an enchantment enter the battlefield. Another one of our themes is around untapping Ramses, because if we put a bunch of auras on our opponent's creatures, we want to be able to use Ramses as much as possible. We don't want to just tap him once and then all of a sudden we're a sitting duck for the rest of our opponents. We want to be able to untap him whenever we want and kill pretty much anything else on the table. Our third major theme for the deck are, of course, auras, but specifically, I tried to find auras that return to our hand in some way. So Fallen Ideal here is 2 and a black for an enchantment that gives enchanted creature flying and the ability to sacrifice a creature to give the enchanted creature +2/+1, but when Fallen Ideal is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it returns to its owner's hand. So we are able to buff up our opponent's creatures, give them benefits, and then as long as they don't come our way, they can stay there, but as soon as they attack us, we're able to kill them. And then we are able to re-enchant something else. Now, along with some themes, we of course have some key cards that we really want on the battlefield. The first one is a relatively new card. We have Hateful Eidolon for 1 black for a 1/2 lifelinking spirit. And it says, whenever an enchanted creature dies, draw a card for each aura you controlled that was attached to it. So this doesn't have to be our creatures, so we're able to put an enchantment on our opponent's creatures, kill them, and then draw cards to replace the auras that we just used, which is a huge help in this deck. The next key card is Fool's Demise. Now, we have a couple of cards that do this. This is another one that returns to our hand if it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, and it also says that when enchanted creature dies, we return that card to the battlefield under our control. So we can enchant our opponent's best creature, kill it with Ramses, and not only get it back under our control, but we can also get this enchantment back so we can stick it on something else. And hopefully this allows us with Ramses to be able to just take the best things from each of our opponents at any given time. Our last key card that we're going to talk about is Vow of Flight. Vow of Flight is an enchantment that enchants a creature, gives it +2/+2 in flying, but the key here is that it can't attack us or a planeswalker we control. So again, we can help our opponents, give them some enchantments, give them some auras, make their creatures big, powerful, nearly unblockable with flying, and then they can't attack us with them. And we can sit here and hold Ramses over their heads, so that way if they do somehow get rid of the enchantment or find a way to, we can kill it before they're able to do that. So all of the goad and the vow cycle, they're all in here. And as I was building this deck, we came across some cool interactions. So there's a couple that I want to mention. The first one is between Chime of Night and Minion's Return. So Chime of Night is 1 and a black for an aura that says when Chime of Night is put into a graveyard from play, destroy target non-black creature. And then Minion's Return is 2 and a black for a flash enchantment aura that says when enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. If we have these 2 cards on the battlefield with Ramses, we are able to kill the creature enchanted with Chime of Night with Ramses, which allows us to kill another creature because of Chime of Night's ability, and if we kill the creature that has Minion's Return on it, we get the creature that is destroyed that had Minion's Return on it. So this is essentially like a 3-for-1 for our opponents, which is pretty good, especially when we have ways in the deck to recur some of our enchantments and get them back if we need them. The second interaction that I found that was kind of cool is between our commander himself, Ramses, and Psychic Impetus. And honestly, any impetus or any vow might work, but I like Psychic Impetus because it gives us some extra advantage, because it says that enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded, so it attacks every combat if able, and it has to attack someone who's not us if able. When it comes down to 1-on-1, then it can attack us. But whenever enchanted creature attacks, we scry 2. So every turn, our opponents are attacking with this creature, we're scrying, we're digging for things that we want, and then if we ever get into a 1-on-1 situation, and our opponent has this and is now able to attack us, we just kill it. Ramses can just tap, destroy it, and we don't even have to worry about it. So, now that we've gotten to the end of this, we're going to take a look at the budget. The total deck price using TCG Mid is $88.73, which is a pretty big deal considering our most expensive card is $73.40. So the rest of this deck, not even including Ramses, is only about $13. So this deck alone, if you have a copy of Ramses or if you have just another generic blue-black commander to fill his spot, this entire deck can be bought for less than $15, which is pretty cheap, all things considered. Obviously, normally this is the part where I would talk about if we can cut the most expensive card. Now, this deck is entirely built around Ramses, so he is very hard to cut. If you cut him, the deck doesn't quite work the way you want it to. You're just playing a bunch of auras. You're not really doing much with him. So obviously he is very difficult to cut in this situation. But if you wanted to test it out, see if you like it before you splurge on Ramses, give it a shot, see if you like it, and maybe just make a slight adjustment to Commander for the test game. But what we're going to do now is jump into a bit of a game played against 3 opponents. We're going to play against Xantcha Sleeper Agent, who is played by Lucky. We're going to play against Toralf, God of Fury, who is helmed by Bilal. And then Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, which is played by Jason. So, I've played against a couple of these decks before. I've never played against Lucky's specific version of Xantcha, so honestly, I have no idea what it does. Toralf is presumably board wipes and a lot of damage-based instants and sorceries, and Kumena is most likely Merfolk. So, I don't think our chances are too bad here. It's nice to see that there's a couple of our opponents that are using creature strategies. I'm sure our enchantments will become very useful at that point, but we'll see how it goes, and I will talk to you guys after the game, and I hope you enjoy it. At the start of the game, Lucky goes first, followed by me, Bilal, and Jason. On Lucky's first turn, he plays a Baron Moor. I play an island. Bilal plays a mountain. Jason plays a Simic Guildgate. Lucky plays a mountain. I play a swamp, and then I cast Prismatic Lens. Bilal plays a mountain. Jason plays a Fabled Passage and cracks it for an island. Lucky plays a swamp, and then casts Mana Geode, scrying 1 to the top. I play an island, and then cast Dimir Key Rune. Bilal plays a mountain, and casts Thaumatic Compass. Jason plays a forest, and casts his commander, Kumena. Lucky plays a swamp, and then casts Underworld Dreams. So for as long as Underworld Dreams is on board, each of Lucky's opponents takes 1 damage every time they draw a card. On my turn, I play a swamp, and then cast my commander, Ramses. Bilal plays a mountain, and then casts his commander, Toralf. On Jason's turn, he casts a Cultivate, putting a forest to play and an island to hand. And then in his second main phase, he plays a Simic Growth Chamber and puts an island back to his hand. On Lucky's turn, he plays an Evolving Wilds, casts Spiteful Visions, and for as long as Spiteful Visions is on board, everyone draws an additional card each turn and takes a damage for each card they draw, which does stack with Underworld Dreams, meaning each of Lucky's opponents takes 2 every time they draw a card, and Lucky takes 1. On my turn, I play an island, and then I cast Death Watch, enchanting Kumena so that when it dies, Jason will lose life equal to its toughness, and I will gain that much. I then cycle a Lonely Sandbar. On Bilal's turn, he plays a mountain, and then casts Spiteful Sliver. He then moves to attack Lucky for 5 with Toralf. Jason plays an island, and then casts a Lord of Atlantis, giving all merfolk +1/+1 and Island Walk. He also casts Herald of Secret Streams, making his creatures with +1/+1 counters unblockable. Lucky plays a Command Tower, and then casts a Nightmare Shepherd. He then casts Xantcha, having it come into play under Jason's control. I play a swamp, and then I cast False Demise, targeting Nightmare Shepherd, so when it dies, it returns to play under my control. I also cast a Despondency, targeting the Spiteful Sliver, giving it -2/-0, and returning the enchantment to my hand when it goes to the graveyard from play. Bilal plays a mountain, and then casts a Lava Coil targeting the Nightmare Shepherd. In response, I tap Ramses to kill the Nightmare Shepherd to prevent it from being exiled so that I can take control of it. Bilal then casts Disrupt Decorum, goading all creatures he doesn't control. He then moves to combat and attacks Lucky for 5 with Toralf. At the end of his turn, Jason taps 3 merfolk to draw a card with Kumena's ability. Jason plays a forest for his turn, and then casts Vanquisher's Banner, naming merfolk. He then casts a Mistcloak Herald, drawing a card from Vanquisher's Banner, and then since he's goaded, he attacks me with all of his creatures. Before blocks, I cast a Doomblade, destroying the Lord of Atlantis, and use the Nightmare Shepherd to block Kumena, only taking 8 damage. On Lucky's turn, he plays a mountain, and then casts a Revel in Riches. On my turn, I activate Ramses to destroy the Spiteful Sliver, so that way I don't have to attack with it, which also makes Lucky a treasure with a Revel in Riches, and returns Despondency to my hand. I then play an island, and I attack Jason for 4 with Nightmare Shepherd. In my second main phase, I recast Despondency, putting it on Xantcha. Bilal plays a mountain, and then casts Knoll Spine Dragon, and at the end of his turn, Thaumatic Compass transforms. On Jason's turn, he plays a Yavimaya Coast, and then casts a Benthic Biomancer, drawing a card from Vanquisher's Banner. He also casts a Bow of Nylea, and then attacks me for 5 with Xantcha, as well as tapping the Benthic Biomancer to make Kumena unblockable, and then attacking Lucky for 8 with his merfolk. Before damage, Lucky activates Xancha's ability to draw him a card and make Jason lose 2 life. He then takes the damage. In Jason's second main phase, he casts Harvest Season and puts 5 basic lands into play since he controls 5 tapped creatures. On Lucky's turn, he plays an Akum Refuge, gaining a life, and then casts Thought Picker Witch as well as Magus of the Wheel. On my turn, I play a Submerged Boneyard, and I attack Lucky for 4 with Nightmare Shepherd. In my second main phase, I cast a Frogify, targeting Magus of the Wheel, but before it resolves, Lucky sacrifices the Magus to the Thought Picker Witch, looking at the top 2 cards of my library, and choosing to exile one of them. Since they're both lands, he decides to hit the land that can cycle. I then cast a Charcoal Diamond. On Bilal's turn, he plays a mountain and then attacks Jason for 7 and Lucky for 5. In his second main phase, he casts an Overloaded Mizium Mortars to do 4 damage to each creature he doesn't control. In response, Lucky activates Xancha's ability, drawing a card and losing Jason 2 life. I attempt to counter the board wipe with a Dissipate, but Bilal is ready with Pyroblast. Lucky then sacrifices his treasure and uses the Thought Picker Witch's ability to sacrifice itself, exiling a card from the top of Bilal's library. In this case, he exiles Slice and Dice. I then cast an Aura Finesse to swap the Death Watch onto Nullspine Dragon and tap Ramses to kill it, draining Bilal for 5 life. Then, finally, the board wipe resolves, and Bilal is able to use Toralf's ability to kill any creatures that would have survived the board wipe, like Xancha. On Jason's turn, he plays a Forest, and then casts a River's Rebuke, returning all of Lucky's non-land permanents to hand. He then casts a Harbinger of Tides, drawing from the Vanquisher's banner, and casts River Sneak, drawing from the Vanquisher's banner. Lucky plays a Swamp, and then recasts Xancha, having her come into play under Bilal's control. He also recasts the Underworld Dreams, but Jason counters it with a Thassa's Intervention, where X equals 2. After that, Lucky casts a Braid of Fire. On my turn, I cast a Thirst for Meaning, drawing 3 and discarding an enchantment. I also cast Ramses. On Bilal's turn, he casts a Robber of the Rich, and then moves to attack Lucky for 7 with Toralf and the Robber, and attacks me for 5 with Xancha. In his second main phase, he casts Lava Ball Trap, destroying 2 of my islands and doing 4 damage to each creature. This allows Toralf's ability to kill Jason and Lucky, eliminating them from the game. On my turn, I play a Swamp, and then I cast Dimir Locket and activate Dimir Key Rune, and attacking Bilal for 2. On Bilal's turn, he casts a Subterranean Tremors for X equals 8, destroying all artifacts and making an 8/8 creature. I move to untap and draw, but without any way to deal with his creature, I concede, and Bilal wins the game. Alright, so that was a pretty fun game. We got to show off some of Ramses' abilities. I liked the Death Watch synergies we had going on. Being able to kill Bilal's dragon with the Aura Finesse was pretty nice. We weren't unfortunately able to win. We got close, but I think a lot of our issues came with the fact that we could deal with our opponent's creatures if we had Ramses on board, but if we didn't have Ramses on board, it was pretty tough. And since our commander is 6 mana, he died a couple times, he got up to 10 mana at the end, it just made the whole game and the whole strategy pretty difficult for us. But we took second, pretty happy with that. And overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. If you guys have any suggestions for any future videos, please let me know. Put them in the comments. And I will see you all on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.